Chosen one. What if I told you that while America lights up the sky tomorrow, God is about to light up your destiny? What if the very moment you hear those fireworks exploding overhead, heaven is releasing something that's been locked away in your spirit for decades? What if July 4th, 2025 isn't just Independence Day for America, but Liberation Day for you? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. Tomorrow, 300 million Americans will be looking up at fireworks, but God is looking down at you. While the nation celebrates freedom that was won 249 years ago, the Almighty is about to declare freedom over chains that have held you captive for far too long. You feel it, don't you? That stirring in your chest right now, that quickening in your spirit. That's not excitement about tomorrow's barbecue. That's heaven confirming what I'm about to tell you. The world hears fireworks. Heaven hears footsteps, yours. For months, you've sensed something shifting. Dreams that feel too real. Thoughts that don't sound like your own voice. A restlessness that no amount of sleep can cure. You've been carrying this weight, this knowing, this burden that tomorrow, July 4th, something changes forever. The enemy has been working overtime to keep you distracted, to keep you focused on the noise, the politics, the celebrations, because he knows what's coming. He knows that while America celebrates what was, God is about to reveal what will be. But here's what hell doesn't want you to know. You're not watching this by accident. You're not hearing these words by chance. At this very moment, 11 p.m. on July 3rd, while the rest of the world sleeps or prepares for tomorrow's festivities, God has you here, in this sacred space, receiving this prophetic download. Something unseen is moving beneath the surface of tomorrow, not in Washington, not in the parade routes, not in the stadium crowds, but in the secret chambers of your heart, where God keeps his greatest assignments. You think it's just another day on the calendar. But what if this is the day your assignment awakens? What if while everyone else is celebrating independence from earthly kings, you're about to receive your commission from the King of Kings? The fireworks tomorrow will last 30 minutes, but what God is about to ignite in your spirit will burn for the rest of your life. Something's moving beneath the surface, but are you still enough to feel it? If something stirred the moment I spoke these words, type, "I'm listening, Lord." This moment chose you. This word found you, and tomorrow everything changes. The countdown has begun. In less than 12 hours, while a nation looks up at temporary lights, heaven is about to shine its eternal light through you. Are you ready? Have you been waking up in the dead of night with your heart racing, feeling like something's coming, but you can't name what? Have you been walking through your days feeling spiritually homesick for a place you've never been? Have you been carrying this weight in your chest, this restlessness that no doctor can diagnose and no medication can cure? Dear chosen one, let me tell you something that's going to pierce right through the confusion you've been carrying, that uneasiness you've been feeling, that spiritual vertigo that hits you in quiet moments, that sense that the ground beneath your feet is shifting even when everything looks the same. It's not anxiety, it's awakening. Your soul has been pacing like a child left waiting in the dark, sensing that someone's coming, but not knowing when. You've been feeling off, disconnected, spiritually homesick lately, because heaven has been trying to reach you. And what you thought was restlessness is actually revelation in disguise. Listen to me carefully. For weeks now, maybe months, you've been experiencing something that the world can't explain, but your spirit recognizes. You'll be sitting in your favorite chair watching the evening news, and suddenly this wave hits you. Not sadness, not fear, but this deep, unexplainable knowing that change is coming. You've been feeling like a stranger in your own life, haven't you? Looking around at routines you've followed for years, relationships you've maintained for decades, and thinking, this doesn't fit anymore. Like you've outgrown clothes that once fit perfectly. The Bible tells us in Ecclesiastes 3:1, "To everything there is a season." And beloved, your season is shifting. That's why nothing feels quite right. That's why your prayers feel different. That's why even your sleep has been restless. Here's what the enemy doesn't want you to understand. When God is about to birth something new in your life, the old starts feeling uncomfortable. When the Almighty is preparing to elevate you, your current level begins to feel like a prison. When heaven is about to speak, your spirit starts tuning out earthly noise. You've been feeling spiritually claustrophobic because you're about to break out of a cocoon you didn't even know you were in. Think about the Israelites in Egypt. Exodus 2:23 says, "The Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out." But here's what's powerful. It says their cry came up to God. That restlessness, that groaning, that sense that this can't be all there is, that wasn't despair. That was the sound of destiny stirring. And right now your groaning is coming up to God. You've been feeling like you're waiting for something, but you don't know what. Like you're supposed to be somewhere, but you don't know where. Like you're meant to do something, but you don't know what. That's not confusion, beloved. That's confirmation. In Jeremiah 1:5, God says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you before you were born. I set you apart." You've been feeling set apart lately, haven't you? Different, called, marked, like you don't quite belong where you are because God is preparing to place you where you're supposed to be. That disconnect you've been feeling from people who used to understand you, that's not rejection, that's divine redirection. God has been tuning your frequency to hear His voice above the noise of this world. But why now? Why today? Why has this spiritual unrest been intensifying as we approach July 4th? Because freedom isn't just a national holiday chosen one, it's a spiritual assignment. And God has been preparing you through every restless night, every unexplainable tear, every moment you felt like you're living in the wrong story, for the freedom He's about to declare over your life. The restlessness isn't random. The timing isn't coincidental. The fact that you're hearing these words right now, feeling your spirit leap inside your chest, recognizing your own story in my voice, none of this is by accident. You've been feeling uneasy because the old is passing away and the new is about to be born. You've been feeling disconnected because God has been connecting you to something higher. You've been feeling spiritually homesick because you're about to come home to your true calling. In Romans 8:19, Paul writes, "For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed." Creation itself has been waiting for you to step into who you really are. And that waiting, that expectation, that divine tension, you've been feeling it in your bones. If you've felt off, disconnected, or spiritually homesick lately, this word is for you. Stay with me. Because what I'm about to reveal will explain not just why you've been feeling this way, but what God is preparing to do about it. The uneasiness you've been carrying isn't a burden to bear. It's a signal to follow, and that signal is leading you straight into the most significant spiritual shift of your life. But here's what you need to understand about what's coming next. You've been feeling it, haven't you? That restlessness that grips you at 3 a.m., that sense that everything familiar is shifting. The world around you doesn't feel the same as it did 6 months ago. And deep in your spirit, you know something massive is moving just beneath the surface of what your eyes can see. Let me tell you what's really happening, chosen one. While the world has been distracted by chaos, wars erupting overnight, economies trembling, leaders falling from grace, God has been orchestrating the greatest spiritual realignment in human history. Like tectonic plates under your feet, the Almighty has been repositioning everything. Silently, you thought those sleepless nights were just anxiety. You thought those vivid dreams were just your mind processing stress. You thought that sudden urge to pray at random moments was just coincidence. But what if I told you that every restless night, every prophetic dream, every unexpected tear during worship was heaven downloading something into your spirit? The enemy has been working overtime to convince you that you're losing your mind, that the stirring in your heart is just old age, that the fire in your bones is just arthritis. But Jeremiah 29 declares, "His word is in my heart like a fire shut up in my bones." What you're feeling isn't physical deterioration, it's spiritual activation. For months now, you've watched the world unravel. You've seen institutions crumble that you thought would stand forever. You've witnessed betrayals from people you trusted. You've experienced losses that felt like they would destroy you. And through it all, you've wondered, God, where are you in all this chaos? Here's what hell doesn't want you to discover. Every setback was a setup. Every closed door was divine redirection. Every painful goodbye was God removing obstacles from your path. You weren't being punished, you were being prepared. Think about it. In the last year alone, how many times did circumstances force you to your knees? How many times did you cry out to God when you had nowhere else to turn? Those weren't moments of weakness, dear one. Those were moments of recalibration. Heaven was tuning your frequency to receive what's coming next. The Bible tells us in Isaiah 43:19, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it?" The word perceive doesn't mean see with your eyes. It means discern with your spirit. And your spirit has been discerning something massive approaching, hasn't it? You've felt isolated, cut off, like you've been living in a spiritual desert while everyone else seems to be thriving. But what if that isolation wasn't abandonment? What if it was incubation? God has been hiding you, protecting you, preparing you for an assignment so significant that the enemy has been fighting to prevent your awakening. Look at your life right now. Really look. How many relationships have shifted? How many routines have been disrupted? How many coincidences have lined up in ways that defy explanation? You've been experiencing what I call divine displacement, God systematically removing everything that would distract you from what He's about to reveal. That phone call you received at exactly the right moment, that unexpected check that arrived when you needed it most, that random conversation with a stranger who spoke words your soul needed to hear. Those weren't accidents chosen one. Those were breadcrumbs, God's way of saying, I'm still here, I'm still working, and your time is coming. The invisible movement you didn't notice has been happening in 3 dimensions. Globally, nations are being shaken, governments are being exposed, systems are collapsing to make way for something new. Personally, your comfort zones have been demolished, your dependencies have been challenged, your faith has been stretched, and spiritually dormant gifts are awakening, prophetic sensitivity is increasing, and divine assignments are being activated. You weren't left out of God's plan. You were being positioned, hidden, protected. While others were building their kingdoms in the visible realm, God has been building something eternal in you. In the secret place, in the quiet hours, in the tears only He witnessed. But here's where it gets intense. The season of hiddenness is ending. The period of preparation is concluding. And what's about to emerge from your wilderness is going to shock everyone who wrote you off, everyone who counted you out, everyone who assumed your best days were behind you. Romans 8:18 promises the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. Not to us, but in us. The glory isn't coming from outside. It's been incubating inside you all along, waiting for the right moment to manifest. Drop a me if you've sensed things shifting but couldn't explain why. You're not crazy. You're not imagining it. You're not too old to be used by God. You're awakening to the reality that everything, every trial, every triumph, every tear has been orchestrating this moment. The veil is lifting, the silence is breaking, and heaven is about to reveal what you've been carrying all along. So what are you about to become? And more importantly, are you ready to step into it? Because this invisible movement you've been sensing, it's been preparing you for the most visible demonstration of God's power your generation has ever witnessed. Listen to me, chosen one. I need you to hear this with every fiber of your being. That long, lonely season, you've been walking through that wilderness where it felt like God forgot your address, where your prayers seemed to bounce off the ceiling, where you wondered if you imagined your calling that wasn't abandonment. That was preparation. You've been living underground like a seed, buried, hidden, forgotten by the world above. But heaven has been watching. Heaven has been watering. Heaven has been waiting for this exact moment when the soil finally cracks and what's been growing in secret breaks through into the light. For how many years have you carried dreams that made no sense? Visions that seemed too big for someone like you, a burden for people who don't even know your name yet. You thought those dreams were dead, didn't you? You thought God changed his mind about you. But what if I told you that every closed door was classroom preparation? What if every delay was divine development? What if every season of silence was actually heaven's graduate school, and you've been earning a degree? You didn't even know you were enrolled in Moses, spent 40 years in the wilderness before God called him to deliver Israel. 40 years, not 40 days, not 40 weeks. 4 decades of anonymity tending sheep, wondering if the burning bush in his past was just a hallucination. But those weren't wasted years. Those were preparation years. Every sunrise in the desert was building the character he'd need to face Pharaoh. Every night under the stars was developing the faith he'd need to part the Red Sea. Joseph rotted in an Egyptian prison for years, falsely accused, forgotten by the very people he'd helped. Can you imagine the questions that haunted his nights? God, you gave me dreams of ruling, but here I am in chains. You showed me bowing sheaves and falling stars, but I can't even see the sky from this dungeon. But those prison years weren't punishment. They were promotion preparation. Every day of injustice was building the wisdom he'd need to run a nation. Every tear shed in darkness was watering the compassion he'd need to forgive his brothers. David, the giant killer, the future king, spent years running for his life, hiding in caves like a common criminal. The man God had already anointed to rule Israel was living like a fugitive. Do you think he didn't question? Do you think he didn't wonder if Samuel got the wrong person when he poured that oil over his head? But those cave years were crown preparation. Every night of fear was forging the courage he'd need to lead armies. Every psalm written in hiding was developing the heart he'd need to shepherd a people. And you, precious chosen one, you've been in your own wilderness, your own prison, your own cave, haven't you? The world didn't see your value. Doors slammed in your face. People overlooked you, underestimated. You counted you out. You watched others get promoted while you stayed hidden. You watched others get recognized while you remained invisible. But what if I told you that invisibility was your protection? What if those closed doors were keeping you safe until you were strong enough for what's coming? What if God was hiding you like David in those caves? Not because you were running from something, but because you were running toward something so significant that hell itself would try to stop you if it knew what was brewing. Your season of preparation is ending. That hidden chapter of your life, it's closing. The underground season where you've been growing roots in secret, where you've been developing strength that no one could see, that season is about to shift. But here's what you need to understand. God doesn't graduate his students early. He doesn't move you from preparation to presentation until you're ready for what he's prepared. And if you're hearing this word right now, if something in your spirit is quickening as I speak these words, it's because you're ready. The soil is cracking. What's been buried is about to break through. What's been hidden is about to be revealed. What's been developing in darkness is about to step into the light. Heaven is no longer hiding you. The training is over. Now comes the revealing. But before he reveals you publicly, there's one thing he must break privately. One final chain that's been holding you back from stepping fully into your destiny. One last barrier between who you've been and who you're becoming. If you've been in a hidden season, if these words are hitting something deep in your soul, type, "That was me." Today, it ends. Chosen one, let me tell you something that's going to shake you to your core. Right now, as I speak these words, there are invisible chains wrapped around your spirit that you've grown so used to, you think they're part of your skin. You've been carrying weights that were never yours to bear, fighting battles that ended decades ago, imprisoned by sentences that were never handed down by the judge of all judges. But July 4th isn't just about America's freedom, beloved. It's about yours. Listen to me carefully. God didn't bring you through hell just to give you a testimony. He brought you through hell to break every chain the enemy forged in those flames. Every betrayal that taught you not to trust. Every rejection that whispered you weren't enough. Every loss that convinced you God had forgotten your address. Those aren't life lessons, dear one. Those are chains, and tomorrow they break. You see, the enemy has been playing a long game with your heart. Every time life knocked you down, he whispered, "This is who you are now." Every time you got passed over, he hissed, "You'll never be chosen." Every time you fell short, he declared, "You're damaged goods." But that voice is a liar and the father of lies. John 8:36 says, "If the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed." Not free-ish, not free with conditions, not free until the next trauma hits. Free indeed. But here's what's breaking my heart right now. Some of you have been carrying shame for so long, you think it's your middle name. Some of you have been rehearsing regret for so many years, you've memorized every line. Some of you have been nursing bitterness until it became your closest companion. Stop right there. Look me in the eyes through this screen. Your trauma is not your identity. Your silence is not your sentence. Your delay is not your denial. The God who parted the Red Sea didn't struggle to part it. The God who raised Lazarus from the dead didn't need a second attempt. And the God who's speaking to you right now, he's not intimidated by the size of your chains. He's been waiting for July 4th, 2025 to demonstrate his power in your life. But here's the part that's going to require everything you've got. You have to let him. See, God is a gentleman. He won't break chains you're still holding on to. He won't free you from prisons you keep rebuilding. That anger you justify because they hurt you first, that's a chain. That fear you nurse because it keeps you safe, that's a chain. That perfectionism you hide behind because vulnerability feels like death. Beloved, that's a chain. Romans 6:6 tells us, "We know that our old self was crucified with him, so that the body ruled by sin might be done away, with that we should no longer be slaves to sin." Your old self, the one that believed the lies, carried the guilt, and accepted the shame, that version of you died with Christ. So why are you still feeding it? Why are you still listening to its voice? Why are you still living in its address? I need you to understand something that's going to sound impossible, but it's gospel truth. Every chain that's held you captive for the last 10, 20, 50 years, God can break them all before your morning coffee gets cold tomorrow. Every bondage that's convinced you, this is just how life is, the Almighty can shatter them faster than those fireworks explode overhead. But here's the shocking truth. No one's told you. The chains aren't the problem. Your attachment to them is. You've become so comfortable with your limitations that freedom feels foreign. You've lived in bondage so long that liberty looks dangerous. You've been identifying yourself by your wounds for so many years that healing feels like losing yourself. But let me tell you who you really are. You're not the person who got hurt. You're the person God is healing. You're not the one who failed. You're the one God is promoting. You're not the victim of your story. You're the victor He's been writing about. 2 Corinthians 3:17 declares, "Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom, not where the right circumstances are, not where the perfect people are, not where the pain finally stops, where the Spirit of the Lord is." And beloved, if you're born again, that Spirit lives inside you right now. So here's your moment of truth. That thing you've been carrying, that hurt, that habit, that hang-up that's been riding your back like a monkey for longer than you care to admit, God is extending His hand right now. He's saying, "Give it to me. I'll take it from here." Your move, chosen one. You can keep dragging those chains into tomorrow, clanking through another 4th of July celebration, making noise but never making progress. Or you can do what 2.4 million Americans did 249 years ago. You can declare independence from everything that's been keeping you in bondage, because once the chains fall, the door swings open. But to wear to a version of yourself you've only seen in dreams, to a calling that's been waiting for you to get free enough to receive it, to a future so bright your past will look like a shadow in comparison. The question is, are you ready to let them go? You've been praying for breakthrough, haven't you? For months, maybe years, you've been asking God to open doors, to end the struggle, to bring relief, to finally let you rest. And then July 4th arrives and something shifts. You feel it in your bones. The heaviness lifts. The fog clears. The door you've been pounding on for so long finally creaks open. But here's what's going to shock you, chosen one. What's going to absolutely turn your world upside down. That door you thought was your exit, it's actually your entrance. You thought God was opening a way out of your trial, but He's been opening a way into your calling. Listen to me very carefully. The furnace you've been in wasn't your punishment. It was your preparation. Every tear you've cried, every sleepless night you've endured, every moment you felt forgotten by heaven itself. It was all forging something inside you that the world desperately needs. You see, most people think deliverance means comfort. They think breakthrough means easy living. They think when God opens doors, it leads to green pastures and still waters. But what if I told you that sometimes God's greatest doors open into greater responsibility? Moses thought he was escaping Egypt for freedom, but God was leading him into the wilderness to shape a nation. David thought he was running from Saul, but God was training him for a throne. Esther thought she was chosen for beauty, but she was positioned for such a time as this. And you, dear soul, you thought you were surviving your season of testing, but God has been qualifying you for your season of assignment. Right now, as these words wash over your spirit, something is awakening inside you, something you've tried to silence because it felt too big, too impossible, too overwhelming. That stirring isn't restlessness. That's recognition. Your spirit is remembering what it came here to do. For too long, you've been content to pray for your own healing, your own breakthrough, your own blessing. But what if God has been preparing you to be the answer to someone else's prayer? What if your deliverance wasn't just about you, but about the generations waiting for someone brave enough to walk through that door? This is why the enemy fought you so hard. This is why the battle felt so intense. This is why you almost gave up 100 times, because hell knew that once you made it through, once you stepped into this moment of revelation, you wouldn't just be free, you'd be dangerous. Dangerous to every principality that's been keeping God's people bound. Dangerous to every system that's been stealing hope from the hurting. Dangerous to every lie that says ordinary people can't do extraordinary things for the kingdom. And here's what's going to make your heart race with both terror and excitement. The assignment God is about to reveal isn't something you're qualified for in the natural. It's not something you studied for. It's not something you applied for. It's something you were forged for in the very fires you thought would destroy you. Jeremiah was just a young man when God said, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you before you were born. I set you apart. See, I appointed you as a prophet to the nations." Jeremiah 1:5. Notice God didn't ask if he felt ready. He didn't wait for Jeremiah to graduate seminary. The calling was already sealed before the foundation of the world. Your assignment isn't based on your resume. It's based on your refinement, and you, chosen one, have been refined by fire until everything false burned away and only pure gold remained. So when that door opens on July 4th, when you feel that shift in the atmosphere, when breakthrough finally comes, don't you dare settle for just being comfortable. Don't you dare think small. Don't you dare believe that God went through all this trouble just so you could have an easier life. No, this isn't just escape. This is entrance. You're not leaving the furnace. You're stepping into fire with purpose. The door wasn't for your comfort. It was for your commissioning. And I can see some of you right now, your heart is pounding. Your hands might even be shaking. Because deep down, you've known this was coming. You've felt it building. You've sensed that your story was bigger than your struggles. You've had dreams that felt too real, visions that seemed too wild, promptings that felt too impossible. But what if they weren't dreams? What if they were downloads? What if God has been showing you glimpses of what's coming because he needs you to be ready when the moment arrives? The world is groaning for deliverers, for voices that carry heaven's sound, for hands that move with divine authority, for hearts that burn with holy fire. And God has been preparing you in secret so that when he reveals you in public, hell will tremble and heaven will celebrate. So what exactly is this assignment, and why you? What makes you think you're qualified to carry something this significant? What makes heaven believe that you, with all your flaws, all your failures, all your fears, are the right person for such a crucial moment in history? The answer will shatter everything you thought you knew about yourself. Chosen one, let me tell you something that will shake you to your core. You didn't stumble across this message tonight by accident. You didn't click on this video because you were bored. You're here because 65 years ago, maybe 70, maybe 80 years ago, when you took your first breath on this earth, heaven marked you, not with a birthmark, not with a blessing, but with an assignment so specific, so precise, that hell has been trying to stop you from discovering it your entire life. Look at your hands right now. Look at them. Those aren't ordinary hands. Those are the hands God chose to carry what others couldn't lift. Those are the hands he selected to open doors that have been locked for generations. God handpicked you like a key carved for one locked door. And tomorrow, July 4th, 2025, that door swings open. But first, let me ask you something that's going to hurt. Why do you think your life has been so hard? Why do you think you've carried burdens that your siblings never had to carry? Why do you think you've been the one holding families together? The one praying when others gave up? The one standing in the gap when everyone else walked away? You thought it was bad luck, didn't you? You thought maybe God had forgotten you. You thought maybe you weren't good enough, smart enough, strong enough. But what if I told you that every sleepless night you spent praying for your children was intercession training? What if every time you held your family together when it should have fallen apart, God was teaching you to be a bridge between heaven and earth? Listen to me carefully. 1 Samuel 16:7 says, "The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." God didn't choose you because your life was easy. He chose you because your heart could handle the weight of what he was about to put in your hands. You've been wondering why you feel different, haven't you? Why you see things others miss. Why you sense things before they happen. Why your prayers seem to cut through dimensions that others can't even touch. That's not coincidence, that's consecration. You've been set apart since birth. Think about Esther, just a girl. No special training, no political connections. But Mordecai looked at her and said, "Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" Esther 4:14. Your royal position isn't a throne in a palace. Your royal position is right where you are, in your living room, in your kitchen, in your neighborhood, carrying the oil of God in an earthen vessel that hell never saw coming. But here's what breaks my heart. Here's what makes heaven weep. You've been carrying this assignment for decades, and you don't even know it. You've been interceding for this nation, standing in the gap, for your family, holding down prayer altars in your bedroom. And you think it's just being a good Christian. You have no idea that you're part of an underground network of prayer warriors that God strategically placed across America 50, 60, 70 years ago for this exact moment in history. Why do you think the enemy has attacked your finances? Why do you think he's touched your health? Why do you think he's tried to isolate you, discourage you, make you feel forgotten? Because he knows something you're just now beginning to remember. He knows that when you fully wake up to who you are, when you fully step into what you carry, kingdoms shift, nations turn, generations are saved. Your pain wasn't pointless. It was prophetic. It was the price of carrying oil. Every tear you cried was collected in heaven's bottles. Every prayer you whispered was recorded in eternity's archives. Every time you felt like giving up but didn't, you were building spiritual muscle for what's coming tomorrow. Jeremiah 1:5 says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." Set apart for what? For this moment, for July 4th, 2025. For a time when America needs intercessors who've been battle-tested, who've survived decades of spiritual warfare, who know how to stand when everything else is falling. You're not too old. You're not too weak. You're not too late. You're perfectly positioned. God didn't make a mistake with your age. He didn't make a mistake with your circumstances. He's been preparing you for 70 years, for the next 7 years of your life. The most important years, the years that will determine what happens to your children's children. But here's the thing that's going to shock you. You've been praying for revival to come to America, haven't you? You've been asking God to move. You've been crying out for breakthrough. What if I told you that you are the revival? What if I told you that God isn't sending someone else to save this nation? What if I told you that the anointing you carry, multiplied by thousands of others, just like you, is the answer to every prayer you've ever prayed for America? Moses was 80 when God called him to deliver Israel. Anna was 84 when she recognized the Messiah. Caleb was 85 when he said, "Give me this mountain." Your age isn't your limitation, it's your qualification. You've earned the right to carry this mantle through decades of faithfulness that hell could not break. If this feels like your divine why, whisper "Yes, Lord" in the comments. And what you're about to walk into requires one last shift inside. Listen to me, chosen one. In less than 24 hours, while America celebrates with noise and fireworks, God wants to meet you in the silence. But here's the brutal truth most believers will never tell you. He can't fill a vessel that's already full of noise. He can't pour new wine into an old wineskin. And he cannot anoint what hasn't been emptied first. Oh, right now, this very moment, your soul is cluttered. Cluttered with yesterday's disappointments. Cluttered with tomorrow's anxieties. Cluttered with the endless scroll of social media, the 24-hour news cycle, the opinions of people who don't even know your middle name. And you wonder why you can't hear God's voice clearly anymore. Jesus said in Matthew 6:6, "But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen." Notice he didn't say, "Find a quiet moment between distractions." He said, "Close the door, shut out everything else, because what's coming on July 4th requires every ounce of your spiritual attention." Let me ask you something that's going to sting. When was the last time you sat in complete silence for more than 5 minutes without reaching for your phone? When was the last time you heard your own heartbeat without the background noise of television, without the ping of notifications, without the constant chatter in your mind about bills and relationships and what people think of you? You can't answer, can you? Because we've become addicted to noise. We've trained ourselves to run from silence, because silence is where truth lives. Silence is where conviction dwells. Silence is where God's voice thunders louder than any earthly distraction. But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to know. Your breakthrough isn't waiting in the noise. Your next level isn't hidden in your busy schedule. Your divine assignment isn't buried under your to-do list. It's waiting in the stillness. It's waiting in the sacred space between your last exhale and your next inhale. Psalm 46:10 commands us, "Be still and know that I am God." Not be busy and hope to catch God in between appointments. Not multitask and expect revelation while scrolling. Be still, stop moving, stop thinking, stop planning, just stop. You say you want God's will for your life, but you won't sit still long enough to receive it. You say you want divine direction, but you're too busy consulting everyone except the one who holds your blueprint. You say you want breakthrough, but you won't break away from the very things that are keeping you bound. I'm going to tell you exactly what needs to happen before July 4th arrives. You need to identify and eliminate the spiritual static in your life. That podcast that feeds your mind but starves your spirit. That relationship that drains your energy but gives nothing back. That habit you do mindlessly every evening that steals hours from your prayer time. The Israelites couldn't enter the promised land while they were still carrying Egypt in their hearts. You can't step into your next season while you're still entertaining the thoughts, people, and patterns of your last one. Here's your uncomfortable assignment. For the next 18 hours, I want you to fast from everything that competes with God's voice. Turn off the news, log out of social media, stop checking your phone every 3 minutes like it holds the secrets of the universe. Because it doesn't. He does. But deeper than external noise is internal warfare. Right now, as I'm speaking these words, there's a voice in your head saying, "This is too extreme. You don't have time for this. Other people don't have to do this." That voice, that's not wisdom, that's resistance. That's the same voice that convinced Moses he couldn't speak, that told Gideon he was too weak, that whispered to David he was too young. The Apostle Paul knew this battle. He wrote in Romans 7:15, "I do not understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do, but what I hate, I do." There's a war happening in your mind right now between who you've been and who God is calling you to become. Your inner Pharaoh doesn't want to let you go. Your internal Egypt feels safer than the wilderness of faith. Your flesh would rather stay in familiar bondage than step into unfamiliar freedom. But God isn't asking for your comfort. He's asking for your consecration. Empty yourself. Empty your schedule. Empty your mind. Empty your expectations. Empty your need to understand everything before you obey. Because God can't fill what's already full of you. It's not what you do next that matters. It's who you become in stillness. In the quiet, God doesn't just speak to you, He speaks through you. In the silence, you don't just hear His voice, you become His voice. In the sacred space of surrender, you don't just receive your assignment, you become your assignment. And when you're ready, when you've silenced every distraction and confronted every internal enemy, when you've made room in your soul for what's coming, I want you to declare this with me. But first, you have to be willing to pay the price of preparation, because what's moving towards you on July 4th will require a vessel that's been emptied, cleaned, and consecrated for holy use. Are you willing to become that vessel, chosen one? Listen to me very carefully. The moment you said yes to God's calling, you painted a target on your back. And if you've been wondering why everything suddenly got harder, why the attacks intensified, why people turned against you right when you started walking in purpose. I'm about to tell you exactly why. You thought obedience would bring peace. You thought following God meant smoother sailing. But nobody warned you about the spiritual ambush, did they? Nobody told you that the closer you get to your breakthrough, the fiercer the opposition becomes. When light hits a locked room, all the shadows scatter and scream. That's what's happening around you right now. Let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. Why do you think Elijah ran into the wilderness right after calling down fire from heaven? Why did Jesus face 40 days of temptation immediately after his baptism? Why did David's greatest battles come after he was anointed king? Because breakthrough births conflict, chosen one. Victory draws warfare. The enemy wasn't worried about you when you were sitting in that pew, comfortable and quiet. He didn't lose sleep when you were just going through the motions. But the second you stepped into your calling, the second you started walking in your God-given authority, hell held an emergency meeting with your name at the top of the agenda. You are a threat now. Threat. That's why it got heavier. Think about it. When was the last time you felt this level of spiritual resistance? When did the attacks on your peace, your relationships, your finances, your health suddenly spike? I guarantee you it was right after you made a decision to go deeper with God. Right after you said yes to something that scared you. Right after you started using your gifts instead of hiding them. This isn't coincidence. This is spiritual warfare 101. 1 Samuel 17 tells us that when David stepped onto that battlefield to face Goliath, the giant didn't just stand there quietly. He roared, he mocked, he intimidated. Why? Because giants only get loud when they're scared. And let me tell you something about your giant. It's terrified of what God is about to do through you. You've been asking God, why is this happening to me? Wrong question. The right question is, what am I carrying that hell is so desperate to stop? Because here's what the enemy knows, that you're still figuring out your breakthrough isn't just about you. Your victory will shatter chains for generations. Your obedience will unlock doors for others who've been waiting in the shadows. That's why the warfare got personal. That's why it got intense. That's why it feels like you're fighting battles on every front. But what if I told you the ambush is predictable and beatable? Jesus said in John 16:33, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." He didn't say you might face opposition. He said you will. But he also gave you the victory before the battle even started. See, the enemy's playbook hasn't changed in 6,000 years. Attack the mind with doubt, assault the heart with discouragement, isolate them from their support system, make them question if they really heard from God. Sound familiar? Right now, some of you are thinking, maybe I was wrong. Maybe this wasn't God's voice. Maybe I should just go back to playing it safe. That's exactly what hell is counting on. They want you to interpret resistance as rejection. They want you to confuse warfare with being out of God's will. But Moses faced Pharaoh's hardest resistance right before the Red Sea parted. Paul and Silas were beaten and thrown in prison right before God shook the foundations and set every captive free. Jesus faced his darkest hour right before resurrection power broke every chain of death. The resistance isn't proof you're on the wrong path. The resistance is proof you're on the right path. And here's what's going to blow your mind. God isn't surprised by the ambush. He's using it. Romans 8:28 promises that all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. Even the attacks, even the warfare, even the resistance you're facing right now. Every arrow the enemy shoots at you, God is going to turn into a stepping stone for your elevation. Every door he slams shut, the Almighty will use to redirect you to something better. Every relationship he destroys was only removing what would have hindered your destiny anyway. You want to know how I know you're winning? Because you're still here. You're still fighting. You're still believing. After everything hell has thrown at you, you haven't quit. That's not human strength, chosen one. That's Holy Ghost power flowing through you. The enemy thought if he hit you hard enough, you'd retreat. But here you are, still standing, still pressing, still saying yes to God despite the cost. You've already won, and the devil knows it. That's why he's desperate. That's why the attacks are so fierce. He's not fighting for your future. He's already lost that. He's fighting to keep you from realizing the power you already possess. If attacks increased after you said yes to God, if the warfare intensified after you stepped into purpose, if everything got harder the moment you started walking in your calling, comment, I still choose him. Because your declaration of loyalty in the middle of the battle is your victory cry. But I need to prepare you for what comes next. Because the closer you get to July 4th, the more desperate the enemy becomes. And what's about to be released over your life in the next 24 hours is going to change everything. Are you ready to discover why this particular date has hell in panic mode? Beloved, let me tell you something that will chill your bones and awaken your spirit simultaneously. The enemy has a playbook, and if you're one of God's chosen ones, your name is highlighted on every single page. You think that exhaustion you've been carrying is just age. You believe those sleepless nights are just stress. You assume that fog in your mind, that heaviness in your chest, that sudden loss of hope that hits you at 3 a.m. is just life. No, chosen one. That's warfare. Satan studied you before you knew yourself. He watched you in your mother's womb when God whispered your assignment over your unformed frame. And from that moment, he's been plotting your spiritual assassination. Not your death that would make you a martyr, your neutralization, your silence, your surrender. Here's his primary strategy. He can't steal your anointing, but he'll try to convince you it was never real. He can't touch your calling, but he'll exhaust you so badly you'll want to quit before you start. He can't steal your oil, but he'll try to poke holes in your jar until you leak out drop by precious drop. Listen to me carefully. The enemy has 4 primary weapons against the chosen ones, and I guarantee, you've experienced at least 3 of them in the past 90 days. First, the spirit of discouragement. This isn't just feeling down. This is a demonic assignment designed to make you question everything God ever spoke over your life. You wake up feeling like you're behind, like you've missed your moment, like everyone else got the memo about life except you. Sound familiar? That's not your thoughts, beloved. That's a lying spirit whispering in your ear at your most vulnerable moments. Nehemiah faced this exact attack. When he was rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem, his enemies said, "What are these feeble Jews doing? Will they finish in a day?" Nehemiah 4:2. They weren't just criticizing the work, they were attacking his confidence, his vision, his very identity as God's chosen builder. But here's what Nehemiah did that you must learn. He prayed, then he posted guards. He recognized spiritual warfare and responded with both spiritual and practical weapons. Second, the weapon of delay. How many times has God shown you something, given you a vision, dropped an idea in your spirit, and then nothing? Doors slam shut, people disappear, resources dry up. Suddenly, what felt like divine timing becomes divine waiting. This isn't God changing his mind. This is Satan throwing roadblocks, knowing that delayed obedience becomes disobedience and deferred hope makes the heart sick. Abraham waited 25 years for Isaac, but during those years of delay, what was the enemy whispering? God forgot you. You heard wrong. You're too old now. It's too late. The same voice is speaking to you right now about that dream, that calling, that business, that ministry, that book, that move God showed you. But delay is not denial. God's timing is not your timing, and Satan knows. This drives you crazy. Third, the isolation protocol. Have you noticed how the closer you get to your breakthrough, the lonelier you become? Old friends drift away. Family members suddenly don't understand you. Even your church feels foreign. This isn't coincidence, this is strategy. The enemy knows that isolated sheep are vulnerable sheep. He knows that when you're alone with your thoughts, his voice sounds exactly like your own. He knows that doubt multiplies in solitude. Jesus experienced this right before his greatest assignment, the cross. Where were his disciples sleeping in Gethsemane, running at his arrest, denying they ever knew him? Even Jesus felt the sting of isolation in his darkest hour. But here's the revelation. Sometimes God allows isolation to create desperation, and desperation drives you to your knees, and your knees are where breakthrough begins. Fourth, the dream assassination. This is Satan's most vicious attack, and if you're over 60, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He doesn't just attack your current circumstances, he attacks your dreams, your hope, your belief that your best days aren't behind you. He whispers, "You're too old. You missed your window. That was for younger people. You should have started years ago." But Moses was 80 when he faced Pharaoh. Abraham was 100 when Isaac was born. Anna was 84 when she recognized the Messiah in the temple. Your age isn't your disqualification, it's your divine appointment. Your wrinkles aren't signs of defeat, they're marks of endurance. Your gray hair isn't evidence of decline, it's a crown of wisdom that the younger generation desperately needs. Have you been feeling tired for no medical reason? Sleepless when your body should be resting? Scattered when your mind used to be sharp, beloved? That's not random, that's not aging, that's targeted spiritual interference. If this is resonating in your spirit right now, if you're recognizing these patterns in your own life, type "I see it now" in the comments, because recognition is the first step toward resistance. Here's the truth that will set you free. Once you name the pattern, you cancel its power. The moment you stop taking Satan's attacks personally and start taking them strategically, everything changes. But here's what concerns me. Chosen one, you won't win this war in your own strength. Willpower won't work. Positive thinking won't work. Even prayer alone won't work if you're not aligned with God's frequency for this hour. Because something is shifting in the spiritual realm. July 4th isn't just about America's independence, it's about your spiritual liberation. But are you positioned to receive it? Are you aligned with heaven's frequency? Or are you still tuned into hell's static? That's the question that will determine everything. And that brings us to the most critical test of all. Beloved chosen ones, if you've stayed with me through this entire message, that alone proves what I've been telling you. You're not ordinary. You're not forgotten. You're not too late. You are precisely where God needs you to be at this exact moment in history. Let me remind you of the 3 truths that must anchor your heart as we approach July 4th, 2025. First, the spiritual warfare you've been experiencing isn't punishment, it's proof. The enemy only attacks what threatens him. Your exhaustion, your isolation, your delayed dreams, they're evidence that hell knows something about your destiny that you're just beginning to remember. Second, God's timing is not American timing. We live in a culture of instant everything, but heaven operates on eternal schedules. What looks like delay to you is often divine preparation. What feels like denial is usually divine positioning. Your season isn't over, it's about to shift into something you never saw coming. Third, you were born for such a time as this, not for yesterday's battles, not for tomorrow's uncertainties, for this moment, for this assignment, for this divine appointment that disguises itself as July 4th, 2025. But here's what I need you to understand with absolute clarity. You are not walking this path alone. Even when it feels like you're the only one who hears heaven's whisper, even when your own family doesn't understand the fire burning in your bones, Even when you question if you really heard from God, you are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses cheering you on. More than that, there's a community right here, right now, of believers who understand your journey because they're walking the same narrow road. In the comments below, you'll find prayers, encouragement, and testimonies from people who know exactly what it feels like to be chosen in a world that celebrates the ordinary. Let me ask you this: what if the very thing you've been running from is actually what you're supposed to run toward? What if the assignment you're most afraid of is the one that will bring you the greatest fulfillment? What if God isn't asking you to be perfect, just willing? Before you leave this sacred space, I want to pray over your life. Not just words, but a declaration spoken with the authority of someone who has seen God move mountains for his people. Father, I lift up every precious soul who has made it to this moment. Lord, you know their names before I speak them. You know their struggles before they voice them. You know their dreams before they dare to dream them. And you know their destinies before they have the courage to walk in them. Right now, in this very second, I ask you to breathe fresh life into weary bones, restore hope to discouraged hearts, reignite dreams that have grown cold, rebuild faith that has been shaken, and awaken destinies that have been dormant too long. Father, if they've been under attack, I pray for your divine protection to surround them like a wall of fire. If they've been isolated, bring divine connections that will strengthen and encourage them. If they've been delayed, release the breakthrough that's been held back too long. Lord, let July 4th, 2025 mark the end of one season and the beginning of another. Let it be their Independence Day from fear, from doubt, from delay, from defeat. Let it be their Liberation Day into purpose, into power, into the fullness of everything you've called them to be. And Father, for those who are still wrestling with whether they really heard from you, silence every lying voice and amplify your truth. Let them know beyond any shadow of doubt that they are chosen, they are called, they are equipped, and they are loved beyond measure. In the mighty name of Jesus, I declare it, I decree it, and I receive it on their behalf. Amen. Beloved, if this message stirred something deep in your spirit, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they're not forgotten. Comment below and let us know how God is moving in your life. Ask for prayer if you need it. This community responds, and we believe in the power of agreement. And if you're not already part of our family, hit that subscribe button. You're going to want to stay connected as we walk through these prophetic times together. More than that, you're going to need the encouragement and wisdom that flows through this community of believers. Remember, you didn't find this message by accident. Heaven orchestrated this divine appointment. Now the question is, what will you do with what you've received? The choice is yours. But whatever you decide, know this: you are loved, you are chosen, and your story is far from over. Go in peace, walk in power, and step into your destiny. Until we meet again, this is your brother in faith, holding you up in prayer and believing for the breakthrough that's already on its way. God bless you, chosen one. Your time is now.